My story, Colored Greens and Baklava, is the first story that will be read this evening. And this is an excerpt, the part that you're going to hear is an excerpt from a longer piece. And this is basically a story about identity and how identity shifts and evolves and changes depending on what the circumstances in our lives are, and also how people perceive identity and how it can sometimes be different from the way that we perceive our own identity. And I'm very, very delighted that Pam Metzger is going to be reading my story this evening. Pam is a very well-respected radio announcer in Northern California, and also she is she's read several times at the Sacramento Stories on Stage series, and I've always enjoyed her reading. So thank you so much for coming this evening, Pam, and reading my story.
Collard greens and baklava. I'm not good at self-disclosure. Ask me a personal question, and I'll either say too little, giving the impression that I'm aloof and evasive, or I'll say too much. Overwhelming people with the saga of my checkered childhood, my views on virginity, chickens, and diamond engagement rings. If I'm really feeling awkward, I'll undershare and overshare in the same conversation. That's what happened when I told Gavin about my divorce. I first met Gavin at St. Otteran's. He's something of a pillar there, being chair of the prayer, walking, and outdoor communion committee, facilitator of the post-metaphysical reconciliation committee, and assistant director of the handbell choir. The demands on his talents are so overwhelming, he rarely has time to loiter around the coffee urn after services, though I've observed him crashing through the double doors of the sanctuary shouting, "Sorry, can't talk now, text me," to anyone who attempts to engage him in conversation. I've also rubbed elbows with him during the passing of the peace, that awkward ritual when, directed by Pastor Heather, I attempt to shake hands with people in the surrounding pews who are not already shaking hands with somebody else. I distinctly remember exchanging peaceful greetings with Gavin because on each occasion he crushed my fingers between his enormous palms and said, "Are you new, sister? Welcome, welcome." We did not have an actual conversation until I joined the prayer walking and outdoor communion committee, or as most people call it, P-Walk, on one of their monthly hikes. On the day of the hike, my alarm chimed at 6:30. I slapped the snooze button and pulled the comforter over my head. Having stayed up late the previous evening to watch my favorite vampire show, I felt entitled to a few minutes of rest. On the second time, I forced myself to get up, to zip my jeans, and to tie my shoes. I wrote a note for Sid and Ronald, "Going hiking, love Mom," and walked out the front door. I don't have a clear recollection of putting the key in the ignition or backing out of the driveway, yet these things must have happened because when my morning stupor lifted, I found myself in my Corolla staring at a red light. Above the traffic signal, the morning sun showed in a pale blue sky. I smiled thinking about the day that lay before me, the crisp air I would breathe, the majestic peaks I would scale. If only the light would change. To mark the passing seconds, I counted. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. At 11 Mississippi, I gave up. The light finally turned green, but waiting had left me edgy and aggravated. And as is so often the case, the universe responded by mirroring my gloominess. At Perrindale Avenue, I was delayed by a delivery truck executing a tricky right turn. Near the cemetery, the wild turkeys, which usually forage among the tombstone, meandered in front of my bumper. By the time I reached the park and ride lot next to the Amtrak station, my optimism had faded. In its place stood my imaginary nemesis, the matron. If she were real, the matron would be this sort of disgruntled civil servant who patrols the corridors of underfunded state institutions in Teflon support hose. She appears when I've screwed up and uses telepathy to reprimand me. As I scanned the park and ride lot for some sign of P-Walk, She comforted me, hands on hips, a substantial paunch straining the fabric of her starched uniform. My sins, indolence, procrastination, general flakiness. My punishment, being left behind in downtown Durango while everyone else scampered through the forest. In the midst of the matron's reprimand, a speck of day-glow orange caught my eye. It was a pupper vest worn by a man who stood next to a woman in a Scooby-Doo hoodie who stood behind another woman in a sensible nylon jacket. Pewauk had not abandoned me. They were in front of the ticket kiosk. The matron retreated back into my subconscious via a dingy make-believe corridor. I locked my car and approached the kiosk. I was afraid you'd already left, I said, glancing quickly from face to face. A few people looked familiar. The rest I didn't recognize, which was not surprising since I'm usually too busy cooking dinner for the kids or pouring earmite medicine into the cat to attend Pewauk's bi-monthly meetings. The woman in the Scooby-Doo hoodie smiled. No worries. Gavin pulled up to the kiosk in a white SUV and stuck his head out of the window. Is everybody there? Everybody here? He shouted as he unbuckled his seatbelt. 12, 13, 14. Awesome. Janet can't make it. Sinus infection. Did we all read the pre-trip intel I emailed? Awesome. It's pretty level, 10-mile loop. It's just a few hills. Make sure you bring enough water. Oh yeah, we adopted that carbon-cutting policy at the last meeting, so find someone to carpool with. While the others went about business of deciding who would ride with whom, I sidled off to my Corolla. It's not that I don't care about global warming. I belong to the Sierra Club, I recycle. Occasionally, I even confuse the courtesy clerks at the grocery store by bringing my own cloth bags. But on this particular moment, vanity trumped my concern for the environment. I had skipped my beatification routine and desperately needed to take a bathroom break at the nearest fast food restaurant. Latrice, do you know where you're going? Well, I think so. I printed the map on that you emailed last night. Awesome. Do you have someone to carpool with? Actually, it'd probably work out better if I drive myself. Gavin frowned. Well, it doesn't make sense to have 15 vehicles polluting the atmosphere when we only need 5. We'll be back in by 4:30 at the latest. He pointed to his SUV where a man with a goatee waited in the front seat. You could ride with me and Luke. Gavin was a man of his word. By mid-afternoon, we'd returned to the trailhead. On the drive home, he and Luke talked about salmon fingerlings and riffle pools. I sat in the back and stared at the ponderosa pines growing beside the highway near the Placer County line where the pines always give way to oaks and manzanita. They ran out of things to say, and the sunburned nose had peered in the rearview mirror. Hey, Latrice, said Gavin. Did you enjoy the hike? It was perfect. I got a great workout. The lake was really beautiful, too. Well, I saw you talking to Yvonne. Yvonne was the woman in the Scooby-Doo hoodie. The guys in the Durango State sweatshirts were her 20-year-old son and his best friend. She and I ended up hiking a good part of the trail together because the boys, as Yvonne called them, wanted to run ahead. She seems nice, I said. Gavin bobbed his head up and down. I was always hoping you guys would connect. She's divorced too, you know. Well, she mentioned that. Since joining St. Otteran's, I had only a few people that knew about my divorce. Gavin was not one of them. Yvonne didn't have enough money to buy out her ex's share of fortune, he continued, so she had to move into an apartment. I had to look for a job, too, after being a stay-at-home mom most of her life. He looked over his shoulder and glanced at me with wide gray eyes. Did anything like that happen to you? Once again, the gauntlet of disclosure lay at my feet. Should I walk away, squeeze into my spandex tights and challenge it to a smackdown? Or follow the advice of my therapist and examine my discomfort, invite it for tea? Remembering that one of the reasons for joining Pewauk was to meet new people, I decided on the latter. Besides, maybe Gavin was attempted to bond with me, to make a leap from acquaintance to compadre. So I delivered my standard spiel, a stock reply, refined and polished over many recitations. Married for 14 years, divorced for 3. My ex lives about 8 miles away in Crossville. The kids see their father every other weekend, and I kept the house. It's my custom to end the spiel with a smile, not a gaudy, toothy smile, just a subtle curvature of the lips, a declaration of equanimity. I had transcended a difficult chapter in my life. I am at peace, looking toward the future. The smile also lets people know that it's time to move on to a less painful topic, like capital punishment, or flag burning, or abortion. Yvonne wanted to go to counseling, but her husband refused. 23 years of marriage down the drain. Did you and your ex have a rough breakup? Asked Gavin. Well, I replied, crossing and recrossing my legs. It is kind of complicated. Compared to my standard spiel and my why did you get a divorce spiel, it's primitive. On the occasions that I've used, it mostly is on first dates and coffee shops. It evoked puzzled frowns. The unspoken response seems to be, really? Why did you get a divorce? There's got to be a bit more about that. Did he sleep around, beat you up, gamble, shoot meth? Gavin's nose reappeared in the rearview mirror. We struggled for a long time. Actually, things went south right after the wedding. He wasn't into family life. Didn't help to get around the house. Refused to make an effort during the holidays. Was a real wet blanket on vacations. Spent hours online playing fantasy football. Gradually, we grew apart. We went to counseling, but it was much too late. Gavin glanced at me sharply. Like my coffee shop dates, he believed divorce required sounder justification. Lurking behind my nuanced reply, a funkier reality surely festered. A juicy tale of duplicity, retribution, crocodile tears, and torrid trysts, chlamydia, paternity suits, catfights, police sirens, smashing chairs, and silicone boobs. He wanted the Jerry Springer Show, not an Ingmar Bergman film. Yvonne's husband left her for another woman, he said. Some chick the same age as his daughters. Luke, who had been dividing his attention between our conversation and a fishing magazine, abruptly fell asleep. I longed to trade places with him, to rip the Oakland Raiders beanie off his head and pull it over my own eyes. Wow, I said, that's rough. Did your ex remarry? Hedging seemed to incite Gavin's curiosity, and to get him off my back, I decided to switch tactics to inundate him with the gritty, unvarnished truth. Yeah, he got married a few months ago to a woman, a girl really, from the Dominican Republic. It was an internet mail order thing. I kind of feel sorry for him. I mean, can you imagine having sex with a strange dude who's old enough to be your father? Gavin swallowed hard, causing his Adam's apple to quiver. For a moment, I thought I'd shocked him into silence. Have you tried online dating, Latrice? Yeah. Any luck? I met a few people, no one special. His Adam's apple quivered again. What kind of men do you like? The turn in conversation lifted my spirits. Fantasizing about Mr. Right was much more fun than complaining about Mr. Wrong. Well, I tried to remember what I wrote in my profile. A good personality is really important. Someone who's kind, spiritual, physically active, has had at least one serious relationship. I'm not into long-distance romance, so he's got to live within a 30-mile radius of Durango. Would you believe I got an email from a guy in Tasmania? What about education, he asked. Does he have to have a degree? I wouldn't say it's essential. He should. I don't know. At least have a sense of intellectual curiosity about the world, I mean, and a job. Or be self-supporting at this stage in life. I have friends who are less educated and friends who are more educated. Gavin cleared his throat. What about dating someone who's a different ethnicity or race? Is that something you're open to? Sure, why not? I traveled a lot. Citizen of the world, really. I grew up in Bell Meadow. It's a military town, very diverse, lots of intercultural marriages. My underarms became sweaty. Was Gavin thinking about fixing me up with one of his white professor friends? The image of my future blind date, formed inside my head. 40-ish, a few acne scars, rectangular glasses, beautiful teeth. His parents could afford a good orthodontist. He divorced 2 years ago, moved to Durango from East Coast. His daughter attends a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. There was the student in my doctoral program. Gavin raised his hand and dropped it on the steering wheel. An African-American woman, very bright, poised. Unfortunately, she was frustrated. Why's that, I asked, making no attempt to hide my fatigue. She's had a hard time meeting men who could relate to her. The black men on campus weren't into serious relationships, too busy building their careers. Regular guys. Gavin lifted both hands to make air quotes. We're intimidated by her success. The rest, he snorted sarcastically, are in prison because of our marvelous criminal justice system. She didn't want to date other men who weren't, African American. I'm glad it's not a barrier for you. When Gavin tried to make eye contact with me, I turned away. I was angry with myself for being polite, for gritting my teeth and answering question after question, watching the blur of traffic through the windows of the SUV. I thought about all the glib one-liners I could have used on him just to set him straight. That's personal poo. Curiosity killed the cat. A lady never kisses and tells. Are you related to Sherlock Holmes? Could we discuss this later over a beer? I was also confused. Was Gavin offering me dating advice because the kids and I looked incomplete on Sunday mornings, sliding into our favorite pew without a man? Ironically, beneath my anger and embarrassment, I felt smug. Yes, I had allowed Gavin to quiz me, but I had omitted the important bits. I had said nothing about Auntie Louise's and Thea Maria's shared love of black-eyed peas, and I had not revealed how chance encounters, Bobby's Bar and Grill, led me to ponder the significance of collard greens and baklava.